Good morning. Welcome to lesson 9.5 and the first half of 9.6. Today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by completing the square and by also using the quadratic formula. Basically, this is an Algebra 2 type of solution that they use and they like students to use. However, I'm just going to introduce it to you and I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to be held responsible for. As far as we're concerned in Algebra 1, you do not have to solve a quadratic equation by the method of completing the square, but you should know how to make an equation a perfect square trinomial. So, the first thing we're going to do to find what the value of C is to make something a perfect square trinomial is you take 1/2 of the B term. Take 1/2 of the B term. The second thing you do is you take that B over 2 and you square it, and then you would add that to each side. So if I were to give you an extremely simple problem like x squared minus 4x plus c, and the directions read, find the value of c that makes each trinomial a perfect square. Okay, so we're going to follow the directions. Let's make sure we can all identify the A, B, and C term. Okay, what does B equal, class? B equals what?
-4.
Good. So we're going to take 1/2 of it. So step number 1 would be -4 over 2, which gives me what? -2. The second step says to square that. What's a -2 squared? 4. So what does C equal?
4.
C equals 4. So let's see if that really works. Does that make that a perfect square trinomial? Yes, it does, because if you were to factor that, it would factor into two equal factors, x minus 2 times x minus 2. Is everyone with me? So let's just look at it in another way for you. Completing the square. Find the value of c that makes x squared plus 6x plus c a perfect square. Step 1. Take 1/2 of the b term. What's half of 6, guys?
3.
Good. Then square it. What's 3 squared?
9.
So what does c equal?
9.
C equals 9. Is x squared plus 6x plus 9 now a perfect square trinomial? Okay, you are not responsible for solving an equation by that's a new word, by completing the square. Is that clear? So let's try a few together. Why don't we do these right here? That'll give us a little bit of practice. Let me just erase this mess. Why don't you guys all go ahead and do 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to give you some specific directions. So when you have a number like 5 and you take half of 5, could you listen, please? So 5 over 2, I want you to leave it as 5 over 2 and then square it and give me C as a fraction. Did you understand what I said? Instead of saying 2.5, which is also correct. However, if you were to factor it, it's going to be a lot easier by you leaving C as a fraction. That is when the middle term or the B term does not, when you divide it by 2, does not equal a whole number. You're going to get a fractional part. So everybody go ahead and do 2, 3, and 4 quickly. So you identify the B term, take half of it and square it. Could you please remember that when you square a negative number, your answer is?
Positive.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let the games begin. All right, you guys have the answers? Yes? Anybody need more time? Okay, answer to number 2. Avery, what'd you get?
X squared minus 8x plus 16.
Good, I just need the value of C. So C equals 16. Perfect. Who wants to share what they got for 3 as a fraction? John?
C equals 25 over 4.
25 over 4. Outstanding. And who'd like to share what they got for number 4? Yes, thank you.
C equals 81 over
81 over 4. Does anyone have a question on any of those? Are you guys good? All right. That's all we have there. So the first part of your homework tonight is skills practice 9.5, 1 through 8. All the directions we'll read. Find the value of C that makes the trinomial a perfect square trinomial. Do you understand what to do? You are responsible, if I were to ask you, list the steps for completing the square. You all could list, there's 3 steps. Step 1, take half of B. Step 2, square the result of 1, or square B over 2. And step 3, you would say add to each side. Yes? Even though we're not going to technically solve them. All right, 9.6, the quadratic formula in all of its glory to the tune of row, row, row your boat. Get ready to sing. It is. You don't see 9.6? Yes? 9.6. Let me look. Let me find mine. Yeah, there's a couple of pages of 9.6. Solving quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. There's a front and a back. Continued. And then there's this page at the end. Do you guys have this page? Yes? Let's see if that's got copied into my notes. It would have been nice if it did. Yay, that's what I want. The quadratic equation. Hey guys, there's a difference between a quadratic equation and a quadratic formula. A quadratic equation is any equation that has an exponent, the highest exponent of 2, and that can be solved using one of the 6 ways. Graphing calculator, factor/zipper, square root property, complete the square, and quadratic formula. So this is a quadratic equation, and this, my friends, is the quadratic formula. And I actually like it when x is on this side. So we have x to the left, and we're going to sing it to the tune of row, row, row your boat. So let me sing it with you. By the time you leave here today, you should actually have that dumb tune stuck in your head. It will stay forever. You will never forget it. Ask anybody I've ever taught. You can ask the upperclassmen, ask a friend. Hey, did you learn the quadratic formula to a dumb song? And they'll sing it for you, okay? So here it goes. Let me just say it to you first. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over, or you could say divided by 2a, and then in the song we yell in, hey. Okay? So, when you memorize something, remember, try to memorize it in pieces. When you learn a Bible verse, you don't learn the whole thing. You learn segments. So the first thing would be, everybody say, x equals negative b plus or minus.
X equals negative b plus or minus.
Good. Next statement. The square root of b squared minus 4ac
B squared minus 4ac
divided by 2a.
2a.
Okay, so the song sounds something like this, if I could sing this early in the morning. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey, or all over 2a. Hey. You ready? Okay, let's just try to do it with me. You know row, row, row your boat?
Yeah.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. If you don't sing, I give a quiz, and you have to come to my desk and sing it to me. So if I were you, I'd start singing now, people. Start singing. You ready? It's an easy quiz. On 3. 1, 2, 3. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey, Okay, you do it without me. 1, 2, 3. X equals.
Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a.
Woohoo! Great job, guys. Awesome. All right. So now let me show you. The nice thing about the quadratic formula is it works each and every time. The yucky thing about the quadratic formula is it takes a lot of time to solve it. Okay? So I'm going to do a really easy problem with you, and then I'm going to show you a couple of other problems. Now let me make a suggestion to you. When you see something that has like a big number in front of the x squared term that you kind of don't think it could be factored, then I would go ahead. First of all, factoring and zippering would be my first line of defense every time. However, in tonight's homework, I am forcing you on those few problems I gave you, even though some of them can be solved easily another way. I need you to start practicing using the quadratic formula because I need you to practice putting the numbers in and using the mechanics of that formula. So when there's a huge number, I don't even play around. I just go ahead and go right to the quadratic formula. Takes a little bit more time, but let's go ahead and do one. X squared minus, let's do this one. X squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, so here is the original equation, okay? And the directions will say solve by quadratic formula. Okay? So the first thing we need to do to solve a quadratic equation, one side must always equal what, guys? So what do we need to do to each side? Good. So we're going to subtract 3 from each side, and now we have x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. So now we want to do some IDing. We want to identify A, B, and C. Now let's just remember that if one of those terms is missing, if there is no A, B, or C term, what would you put in for them? 0. Good. Hey, lanyard check. Everybody put your lanyard on. John Boy. ¿Dónde está? Let's go. All right. Help me out. What does A equal, guys? A equals?
1.
What does B equal?
2.
What does C equal?
-3.
Great job. The next thing I want us to do, just give me 1 second here. I just want to make sure that's the problem I wanted. I believe it is. Yes. Okay, here we go. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to write out the quadratic formula. So in your head, if you do this every time on your homework tonight, you'll have it memorized. Okay? So this is going to be x equals. Let's sing it together. 1, 2, 3. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey! Oh, that hey was awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to substitute our numbers in. Is everyone with me? Does anyone have a question? Okay, remember you're solving for x because the solution, I'm surprised how many people miss this on my test. The solution to a quadratic equation is called a root or an x-intercept, okay? So x equals a negative b, which would be a negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b, which is 2 squared, minus 4 times 1 times negative 3, all over 2 times 1. And I get x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus, is that a negative 12?
Yes.
All over 2, which becomes a negative 2 plus or minus, sorry, the square root, 4 minus a negative 12 becomes 4 plus 12, or 16 over 2. So now I have a negative 2 plus and minus 4 over 2. Now that's not the end. Now we're going to write two separate equations. So one would be negative 2 plus 4 over 2, and the other one would be what? Negative 2 minus 4 over 2. And you're going to get two solutions. What's a negative 2 plus 4 give you? And 2 over 2 gives me a solution of 1. A negative 2 minus 4 is a negative 6. A negative 6 over 2 gives me a... So what are my two solutions? Negative 3, positive 1. Maybe. Okay? Yes? All right, so that was easy and simple, but a little long. But let's show you, do you think that equation could have been x-factored? Yes, of course. So on a test situation, I would always see if it can be factored and zippered first. So I would say, what multiplies to negative 3 and adds to 2, and what would you give me? 3 and negative 1. Okay, and then when you zipper it, you know that your set builders will be the opposite, negative 3, positive 1. Is that what we got? It is. Okay, so let me go on record as saying a few things. Statement number 1. On a test, unless I am extremely specific, you can solve it any way you want. How's that sound? Great. Tonight's homework. How am I asking you to solve numbers 1, 2, 7, 9, and 13? Quadratic formula, even if you didn't want to. Okay? Now let me just give you one other thing. If you're ever solving the quadratic formula and you get something like this, the square root of a negative number, you're going to tell me at this point is no solution. Because until you get to Algebra 2 and you work with what we call imaginary numbers, and we don't deal with that in Algebra 1. So let's say you get all the way down to here and you get 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 10 over 1. Your answer is what, guys? No solution. That means that that graph is not going to intercept, touch, kiss, come near the x-axis. Okay? Does anybody have a question on today's lesson? I wanted to keep it really, really simple. There's another part to the quadratic formula, which is the discriminant, which is very simple and straightforward, but I like to break it up. Is everyone in good shape? Is the homework the same on both sides? Yes? All right, this concludes our lesson for today. Thanks, and have a great, great rest of your day.